This is based off a conversation I had with one of our clients, incredibly successful individual, super humble. One key takeaway I learned from him as we've kind of worked with him throughout this journey is he mentioned it's just as hard to build a billion-dollar business as it is $100 million business. And you might as well aim as ambitiously as possible. And so he's part of this organization called YPO. One of his peers recently got a lot of notoriety in the franchising space. And so today we're going to do a little bit of a tangent and doing a deep dive into this individual. He is a 28-year overnight success story. And especially in this day and age, graduating from Stanford Business School, what's interesting is he didn't go into a technology company or a startup. And in fact, he went into IRL in real life, a business in real life. And he started with, restaurants. And so getting to 8 and getting to the largest was phenomenal, right? And in terms of his journey, the journey starts with him failing with a company at a young age and struggling because there were inefficiencies of scale. So he had some issues with capital. He had some issues with selling customers and also the vendors, right? And so over time, he failed his way to finding a model, right? Applebee's that was, in his words, 2 or 3 times the size of the existing incumbents, TGI Fridays and Chili's at the time. And so when he got into it, he started it. Notice that he didn't go into other locations just yet until he mastered the Applebee's model. And then he kind of diverted and extended out to other types of franchise models. And so what's really interesting is there's a few key pieces here. Yes, he's a success story. Yes, he's phenomenal. But what is interesting is kind of hearing him, talk about the journey. He really focuses on what not to do. What not to do has as much of a driving force in your success in terms of your career, professional, or your business as what to prioritize, right? He makes kind of the key decisions of real estate and leadership staffing and strategic and kind of finance, the things that actually drive the business, right? And he also had kind of a deep long-term vision, high conviction, right? Stubborn on the vision, flexible on the details. There's a large volume of articles talking about his best practices, right? The fact that he used a discipline and to focus on the bigger picture to kind of to scale, right? He had to kind of learn the business from the ground up. He was actually doing some of the GC general contracting. He was also working in the business, which is great, right? Because everyone wants to kind of have that overnight success story. However, the real truth is it's just a lot of elbow grease and time, right? And focus and prioritization, right? And so what's really interesting is, after he kind of mastered what Applebee's, he kind of scaled up to different operations and different types of businesses, and he kind of continued. And he's never kind of stopping, right? What's really interesting is the fact that during COVID, he was one of the few kind of operators that was able to step in and buy a kind of a distressed restaurant group. And the reason why he did it, obviously he has a smart idea with capital allocation, but he was pretty opportunistic because he had the right team, he had the right operating system, and he had the right patience, right? What the heck does this have to do with longevity, health and wellness, right? Again, it's like how you do anything is how you do everything, right? Sometimes clients come to us and they're like, hey, look, I've spent, decades building my business or decades kind of, with years of elevated cortisol levels or oxidative stress and poor dietary habits and sleep patterns, but I want to see stuff like overnight or in 90 days. And sometimes, it really is trying to take a level set and understand that it takes time to reverse years of damage, right? And years to start kind of building out the right habit patterns of sleep and what to eat, supplements and so forth. And also, being able to make sure that we are helping you focus on not necessarily your area of competence, but your area of genius. And I say this to illustrate a point, right? One thing that's really interesting about Greg is he is super focused not on his area of competence, but his area of genius. So what is that? Effectively, your area of genius gives you energy, something that you're good at, but you're energized by it, right? And so when you think about, sometimes we just focus on things where we're competent at, but sometimes these tasks are very draining. And, you're just, at the end of it, you're like, what, gosh, I don't love this, right? But if you notice that when Greg kind of entered the restaurant space, he wasn't going into kind of creating new concepts from the ground up. He tried that, didn't work for him. But instead he focused on the franchise model, which allowed him to kind of nail down a few variables and then master those variables, right? I was super inspired by Greg, not because of, oh yeah, he's this, master of the, the franchising model, but he was patiently patient. Why we're so successful with our clients, we work with a lot of, I would say, top 1% of business owners, founders, and entrepreneurs and executives. And what we notice is that they have these long-term perspective that's not rooted in daily, monthly, quarterly results. Those are important, right? But they're rooted in what they can accomplish in 5 to 10 years. We've had a cadre of individuals that have had 9-figure exits on 8-figure type, 7-figure to 8-figure growth models in their top line and so forth. And, it is really inspiring. And I say this to hopefully help you all be inspired by what is possible, but also to pick up some of the tidbits with regard to operators like Greg Flynn, and also to take the long-term perspective. JD here, and talk to you soon.